Get started. For those that don't know who I am, I'm Joyce Hall. I'm NODA's Executive Director, and I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar talking about spring learning for 2027, and also just share some lessons learned and things that we learned from 2026, even though we're still in it a little bit. But I want to thank you all for being here. This is being recorded for those that aren't able to attend in person because we know it's a really busy time. And so we'll make it available for folks to watch at a later date. Melissa, you want to go to the next slide, please? So what we want to do today, one slide back. Thank you. What we want to do today is give you a summary of Spring Learning 2026. I want to give you some highlights and some lesson learned from the chairs. So super excited to hear from our fabulous volunteers who helped with that. We want to talk a little bit about changes for 2027. And then if there's folks that are coming in live, we will give the opportunity to answer any questions, and then we'll do a wrap up. So really excited to talk through what we've learned and where we're headed. I'll turn it back over to Melissa.
Thank you, Joyce. Hello, everyone. Melissa Guffey, Director for Conferences with NODA. So here, just wanted to go through a really high-level overview of what we have done and are still in the process of doing for 2026. So we ended up hosting 3 in-person conferences. We did cancel one of our conferences in Minneapolis due to some civil unrest. But we've done 3 in-person conferences in California, Florida, and Maryland. You can see for almost all of our in-person locations, we were close, if not exceeded our attendance goals, which we are very happy about. Virtual registration, a small plug, is still open. So hopefully we will continue to see our virtual attendance grow as well. But really some high level lessons learned as to what we've accomplished so far. First is that our spring learning conference model works, giving our members the flexibility to attend any conference that is best fit for their schedule, to go to any location, has really worked for them. We actually have had one member from the state of Texas attend every spring learning conference. The shared curriculum and conference theme, in addition to having similar educational partners like Active Minds and Leadership, and even some of the same sponsors like Playfair, really helped us to create consistency and to elevate the conference experience as a whole. You'll hear from the chairs, but hopefully the collaboration across all the planning committees and the ability to network with each other, I found to be one of the highlights and things that worked really well with this new conference model. Some growing pains that you might hear, as the chairs give their highlights, but creating something new very quickly. UC Irvine, they had less than, I think, 4 months to put together their conference and to create their schedule and pull their committee together. And also for us as a committee and, for the chairs and the planning committees to define what is spring learning as we were creating it. And really, we tried to balance, kind of our goals and themes, but also you can see one of the questions that we asked in our spring learning survey for those who attended was, what do you hope to gain from the spring learning conference? And you can see that peer-to-peer learning, the team building, and the networking and giving really undergraduate students the first time to attend a conference and to present, to work on their communication skills was really a valuable experience for them and is something that we held true across this new model. And then really it's redefining expectations, figuring out what spring learning is, this being our pilot year, and having nothing to actually compare it to. But overall, I would say from my perspective, it was successful. But instead of hearing it from me, I'm going to share and turn it over to our chairs, who they can, share their experiences and provide some insights, especially for those on the call who want to learn what it's like and what it takes to be a host for 2027. So I'm gonna pass it over to Leslie and Paula.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you for sharing all of the high level overview stuff. And now we want to kind of just dive into how each conference was. But specifically, we're going to start off all the way in California. And so our conference was hosted on February 20th to 22nd. It was a beautiful sunny weekend. Might be a little bit cloudy on some days, but it was still sunny California in some moments. Some of the highlights that we really want to touch upon was, of course, having our keynote leadership as our opening keynote session. I think we all felt it was very, very helpful to be able to all have a similar language in what it consists of, like leadership and what they had talked about. And what was really awesome is that during our educational sessions, we actually had separate blocks for leadership as well as active minds that were both very well attended. The next is our service learning project and Boba Social. You can't not come to Southern California and not have boba. It's our staple. And so we had a service learning project in which we made bookmarks to donate to Family Promise OC. It's a nonprofit here in Orange County that focuses on supporting individuals and family members that need that are housing crises. And so we were able to donate 130 bookmarks to them, as well as donate 50 bookmarks to the local elementary school libraries in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that was definitely due to the unrest. Our committee member had shared wanting to do more to support Minnesota. And so this was what we ultimately led. So thank you so much, Melissa and Joyce, for letting us follow through with that project. And of course, we had some boba from our local boba shop that created a very fun environment where people were able to just like very calmly do bookmarks, drink boba, socialize. And we also had a really, really fun game of trivia. So shout out to our committee member for being able to pull all of that off during the time. And then the last part is the special evening socials. For Playfair, for undergraduates, we had Playfair on that first Friday night. It was very fun, energizing, and we could tell that a lot of students had left Playfair having a couple more tricks up their sleeve in how to being able to socialize with each other. But I'm gonna pass it over to Paula to talk about a couple more points.
Yes, hi y'all. So the next piece with the special evening socials is the pub. So we partnered with our pub on campus, which was really, really cool. They opened a little bit later to accommodate our group and us for our graduate students and our professional staff. Folks really enjoyed it. We had some snacks for them, and it was just really a relaxing space for everyone. We didn't have any like formal activities, but there was a raffle for those who attended at the end. Moving on, we also had 5 peer-to-peer learning blocks with an optional case study competition for our undergraduate students in each room. There was 3 different types of winners, and so that was really exciting to shout out folks, highlight folks at the end of the conference. We had a total of 23 education sessions, peer-to-peer learning. And then overall, we had 133 attendees from 22 different institutions, which was really exciting. There were 85 undergraduate students, 6 graduate students, and 44 professional staff. And Leslie and I just want to round out our slide with some advice. I think there's a lot of different advice and highlights for us. I think the one that I really want to highlight is connecting and connecting and leaning on NODA, especially Melissa. I think Melissa is a really, really, really great resource for all chairs. And so if you were to apply and become chair, I think Melissa is the best resource there is out there. So kind and also just so open and welcoming, open to any thoughts and suggestions. And then I'll hand it back over to Leslie.
Yes. Shout out Melissa. That's also part of it. The other thing that Paula and I, when we had talked about a little bit of advice for other co-chairs, is really leaning on your committee. We were incredibly fortunate. The only way we were able to pull off such a fast conference in such a short amount of time is because we had an incredible committee that we leaned on, we trusted them, and having so much trust in these individuals really led to such a successful conference and being able to carry out not only our vision, but their vision as well for the conference. And so, of course, there's other things. Be well rested, take all the pictures, and really soak in the moment. Many of us will not always get these opportunities. And so very thankful that we were provided the opportunity, and whoever's future out there will also be provided the opportunity. And so it's really good to just soak it all in. So thank you all.
Thank you, Leslie and Paula. And thank you for the kind words. Our co-chairs for University of South Florida, Lindsay and Kristen, unfortunately could not attend the webinar today. But I still want to highlight the hard work that their team put in. For their conference, they ended up having leadership, and they did 2 days worth of keynotes. So they kicked off their Friday night, and then on Saturday, they ended up doing a special keynote, one for undergraduate students and then one for grads and staff. They had a total of 49 peer-to-peer learning sessions, the highest out of all of our spring learning conferences. Their evening socials, Playfair, Everything But the Mime came in to do a silent disco. They also had a chill room. Their esports there at the University of South Florida came in to set up a space for students. And they had someone from their fitness center come and teach a dance class. So their evening socials were absolutely amazing. They also had a very successful service project. They collected 585 books for the Friends of Library in Tampa and 380 bookmarks, some of which they also donated to Minnesota. And they had 87 students participate in their undergrad and graduate case study competitions. I would say if they were here, the advice that they would provide for, anyone who's looking at being a part of a planning committee or especially to be a host is to help your committee understand spaces and layouts. This spring learning location almost had 500 people, so space was at an all-time premium. So they really, hindsight is 2020, tried to figure out, if they would do it next year or, for future years. Being able to provide a video tour or pictures of spaces, especially for those in the attendee experience leads and subcommittees, so they get a better picture of spaces and layout. But I think regardless, they still did an incredible job with none of us actually knowing, outside of the two chairs, what the space looked like when planning a conference. So I'm going to hand it over to our Towson team.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Hi, everyone. My name is Chandler. My pronouns are she, they, and I served as the co-chair for the Towson University Spring Learning that happened March 20th through the 22nd of this year. My co-chair, Candace Collins, cannot be here today, but she was an amazing co-chair. I just want to shout her out uh, for everyone here. So just some highlights about our conference. We had two keynotes. We had Active Minds and we had Leadership. Leadership kicked us off on Friday night with an amazing activity, many activities for our students and our pro staff to do. And Active Minds also provided a great opportunity for breakout sessions for both our undergraduate students and our pros and grads to learn more about what Active Minds had to share with everyone. In terms of our evening socials, we did have a bingo night, our first night, which was a big hit. Shout out to our attendee experience team for that. We also did Playfair for our undergraduate students Saturday night. In addition to that, we had a chill zone and a game room if it was a little too much for our undergraduate students. And we also had a craft night for our pros and grads. In addition to this, we had affinity spaces for various groups uh, representative across NODA. And we had 6 education blocks for our peer-to-peer learning sessions throughout the weekend. We also had our undergraduate case study competition, which we saw a whopping number of 77 students participate. We also gave out 3 awards. So that was a really great experience for our undergraduate students. And lastly, we did do our service project with Baltimore Books Through Bars, and we donated 193 books. So I just want to share a few lessons learned. So patience is key. Everything will fall into place, whether it be your committee at the beginning of the planning process or the end product itself. Uh, it really does pay off to be patient and just to watch things fall into place because you are putting in the work and it will come to fruition. Leslie and Paula mentioned this already. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the downtime also. There will be some times during the conference itself where there isn't that much to do. so you can soak in the hard work that you've done. Um, I also want to share just things to consider as well. Melissa did mention space in in terms of how many attendees your target is, and just taking in consideration the physical space that you have at your host institution. Uh, Also, timing of your job responsibilities and timing of the conference. So you need to really be on top of your responsibilities in terms of what you need to do for your actual job versus what is required for the conference. And also just have fun with it. I wish I knew how much fun it was going to be before I jumped into this. I was really scared because it was something new, but this process was extremely fun, especially working with Melissa and my co-chair and my committee. So that is all I have to share today. Thank you.
And that leaves me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Dolan. I serve as the coordinator for orientation programs at Montclair State University, but also the chair for the virtual Spring Learning Conference that has not happened just yet, 10 days away from kicking off the virtual Spring Learning. And we're super excited. The entire committee has been meeting weekly at this point, a lot of time spent together trying to put this Spring Learning conference together. But you'll notice as I go through some of these schedule highlights, a lot of the same elements of the in-person conference you'll find at the virtual conference as well. So when Melissa talks about, having kind of standardizing the offerings at each spring learning, we're keeping it consistent. Whether you attended in California or you're joining us virtually, you'll get a very similar conference experience. So having similar keynotes. We're bringing in Active Minds on Friday, Leadership on Saturday. That peer-to-peer educational sessions, those are not going anywhere. That's the meat of our conference that'll take place on Friday. We have 4 educational session blocks with 16 educational sessions in total, so enough for people to choose from, those who are joining us virtually. And then evening socials as well. So that's also not a piece we wanted to do away with just because we're virtual. It's almost a greater opportunity to meet people from across the country, of course, all from the comfort of your own space, whether it's your office, your couch, wherever you join us from, you can join us from anywhere. So there's a breakdown of our schedule on Friday and Saturday. It is just a 2-day experience compared to in-person conferences that were traditionally 3-day. But we'll have undergraduates, graduates, and professionals on Friday with our keynote, 4 ed session blocks, and our socials. And then we're inviting the undergraduate students back on Saturday for 3 hours to have another keynote. That'll be when they hear from Leadership and some associate member programming. We'll have Playfair come in because Playfair does a virtual experience as well. And so we're excited to have them on virtually. A large portion of our registrants already are undergraduate students. So we're so glad to see that some professionals have found the virtual option beneficial for if you can't bring your entire team in person. We understand travel can be difficult. This was the option for you to bring that entire team and is still the option. So registration does not close for another week. So if you're watching and you have orientation leaders or undergraduate student staff who work with you year round who didn't get a chance to join an in-person conference, they're more than welcome to join us virtually. And even if you did attend an in-person conference, you can continue learning virtually on Zoom. It's been a great learning experience. There's a lot of benefits from the planning side. For us, space is essentially unlimited. We will be on Zoom. We'll be using breakout rooms that can house up to 1,000. If we need to house up to 1,000, we can. But that's been beneficial. So some of those on-site logistics are not so much on our plate. So that gives us the freedom to really examine the educational offerings. How are we kind of duplicating what we've seen in person and making it, the virtual version of that. So it's been a great experience. We look forward to kicking it off, and we're continuing to kind of demystify what this virtual experience will look like. We all know regional conferences in the past have kind of taken shape, and they are the spring learning conferences here. But the virtual option is relatively new, and so trying to make it as beneficial as if you were to attend in person. So the learning is happening, and you are still more than welcome to join us 10 days away. Registration closes in 1 week on April 21st. So we hope you'll join from, again, your office, the beach, your couch, wherever you want to join us from, you're more than welcome to hop on Zoom next Friday. We hope to see you there.
I want to thank our fabulous co-hosts for all the tremendous work that they've done and what Stephen continues to do as we finish up with our virtual spring learning conference next week. We could not do this without our volunteers. And so thank you so much for all of the tremendous work that you did for the association and for our members. And your kind words for Melissa are very well deserved, Melissa. So I'm glad you found a team member with her. But what we want to talk about now is our spring learning locations for 2027. I wanted to share, first of all, um, as Melissa said, this is a pilot. 2026 is a pilot, and we're going into year 2. And there's still some, evolution that we need to go through as we're going into year 2. With the model that we use, we had intended on it being pretty mirrored like the annual conference program planning committee. And what Melissa is looking for is to have additional overarching chair like we do for the annual conference. We didn't do that this year, so we want to try that in 2027 to try to help give her some additional support and guidance as we bring all of the teams together to help with the planning of the 5 locations that we'll be doing, because we will be 5 locations again. It'll be 4 in person and 1 virtual. That is the model that was presented to the association office through the motion and the ad hoc committee that was put together once the motion passed. And what I want to share with you is there is 1 location that's already been selected, and that is the University of South Carolina. And the reason that has already been selected is we were contacted by the National Resource Center for the first year experience, who wanted to do their peer-to-peer leadership institute with us. And we said, how about if we connect it to our spring learning experience? And so that's why the University of South Carolina has already been selected. But that doesn't mean that anyone can be a chair for that location. It doesn't have to be a team member from the University of South Carolina. We will need to have someone as a logistical connection. But I wanted to just point that out, is that anybody can apply for that. And then we'll have our 3 other locations. The original notion, again, was that we would rotate every year around the United States where we're going to host these experiences, and then again, 1 virtual conference. And we understand that means that we're not always going to be in a particular geographic location that you may have seen previously in the regional conference model, but this is a new model. So we're testing the locations in these first 2 years. And then we want to find where the sweet spot is. And as we get into our year 3 in order to have that. But we will have planning committees again, like we have had this year, that overarching chair. And then we'll have co-hosts or a host from each location. We'll have the attendee experience again, educational programming, communication and technology, and our speakers and special initiatives. All of that will remain the same. The biggest change is having that overarching chair for the locations. So we're very excited to see what institutions are interested in the areas that we're going to in 2027. And then we also, of course, will be opening up those applications for not only hosts, but planning committee members as well. So our members will be able to have more time in the planning this year is the goal. It was swift this first year. And again, I think everybody who volunteered for the conferences, because it did happen pretty quickly as we brought everything together. So I think with that, we want to go ahead and ask the people that are attending if they have any questions for either Melissa or I or any of the chairs. So we'll open it up. You can either put it in the chat, or if you want to unmute and ask us some questions, that would be amazing. We might need to promote two panelists in order for people to chat. Is that true, Melissa? Am I looking at this right?
I Everyone should be able to talk.
Okay. And
But
if
if
we don't have
you
any questions, but that's okay too. But we want to make sure that we give time for folks if they have any questions, to make sure that they take the opportunity to do that. Um, I see a Q&A in here. When should we expect to get emails regarding virtual? Oh, and I'm sorry, the one before that. What is the timeline of planning? Will some of the work be done in the fall or just in the spring? Melissa, can you answer that?
Yeah, I can answer this. So timeline right now, we are looking for chair and for host institutions. Those applications will close on April 29th. The hope is to have those selected, and planning committee applications will open, I would say, mid-May. Ideally, the planning will start in September with education sessions opening in October. So a majority of it will fall in late October, November, December, and then early in the springtime. Obviously, depending on the institutions that are selected and the dates that are available, we, could fall anywhere in the February, March, or April timeframe for the actual conferences to happen.
Thank you for that. The next question is, when should we expect to get emails regarding virtual?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So anyone registered for the virtual spring learning will receive a large know before you go, know before you log in email this Friday. So we have an attendee guide, similar to if you were to attend in person, you'd have the conference app. We have kind of put together more of a PDF version with the link and with more information. So a lot of virtual spring learning information will be landing in your inbox this Friday. And at any point, if you have any questions for the committee, you can email springlearning5@umn.edu, and we'd be happy to provide you more information. But that one big know before you go email will be coming out at the end of this week.
Thank you, Stephen. The next question is, if not a co-host from the same institution, do we select the co-host or would NODA? I think, Marley, what you're asking is if there's not if you're applying and you don't have a co-host, would NODA select the co-host? I think that's what you're asking. So I'll start, and Melissa, please answer. So when the application's open, we are asking for what the level of interest is that people have, and so we would work with whoever the original host is, if you will, to work with them on the additional co-host if there's one that is needed. Melissa, there's anything you would want to add to that?
Some people on the application, if you already know who you want to be a co-host with you, again, they don't have to be at the same institution. You can put that information in. Otherwise, we will do, I would say, a small interview. We'll have a conversation for anyone who does apply to be the host, because we definitely want to, ask about their vision, about space, dining options, what's in the area. We'll want to learn more about your institution and why it would be a good fit to host a spring learning conference there. So if in that conversation you don't have a co-host, you don't necessarily need one, but if you are interested, then we can definitely have that conversation to help fill that role. I think, I don't want to speak for those chairs on the call, but I think they all found benefit in having a partner, especially for the in-person conferences.
Mhm. The next question is, how does the location get determined? Is it purely based on the host individual institution or location first? Again, I'll start with that. That's a really great question. Melissa, please feel free to contribute if needed. So again, based on the original ad hoc report, we were instructed to rotate around the country so that we're not geographically in the same location every year. And so we went to four geographic locations this last year, minus Minneapolis, unfortunately, having to be canceled. And then we moved, we're moving in the other areas that we haven't been in for year two. And so when the call went out, then we're looking for folks to apply in those locations. But I will share with you, if we do not get folks that right, if there are not institutional hosts that are interested in certain areas, then I think Melissa and I would evaluate what does that look like? Do we need to open it up in other areas? As an example would be, I think something that we may do. So again, still testing this model as we're going into year two. Melissa, is there anything you would want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a balance, right? Is it the institution or is it the location? And I think it's both, right? We want to make sure that, it's an easy location that our members can get to. It's not going to take, we're not 2 hours from an airport, which is right additional drive time and travel time. So hopefully, this past year, I think we found a sweet spot with all of our locations. And also just making sure, right, the institutions are able to host. That all of the things that we're looking for. You have a large ballroom or a large theater. You have additional flex space for all of those peer-to-peer learning rooms. Um, all the spaces for the socials that everyone has planned for this year and what we're looking for next year are all going to be factors that we'll definitely have a conversation with those who do submit host applications to have those conversations. I know that there's another question here about the form doesn't ask for anticipated rooms, parking, hotel costs. Is this something that we should be prepared to speak to? And the answer is yes. In the application form, we do ask you for what dates would work. And maybe either Chandler or Paul and Leslie can kind of share their experience with all of you. But from my understanding, they did a lot of those initial conversations to make sure that the dates that they selected on the form were actually available, and they worked with their institutions and had those conversations prior to the application process. But maybe Chandler, Paula, Leslie, do you have anything to add as you all went through and were selected as hosts? How did that process work out for all of you?
Yeah, so I can kick us off a little bit on our end. When Paula and I had saw that spring learning was looking for chairs, yeah, we threw our hat in the ring. But there was definitely some things that we needed to do prior to really submitting the application. One of them, because we knew we wanted to host it in our campus, we wanted to check in with our student center and event services folks to kind of inquire about a couple dates and inquire like if they have the capacity, if we could do this, which I know we have the capacity. I've seen other conferences before, but we definitely want to inquire about that. We talked to our higher level of leadership, so our dean of students, individuals that supervise our director. We talked to our director, just so that we're all on the same page that this is a very big project that you take on, and it could take not only a lot of your time, but your capacity. Personally, for us, we were in the middle of hiring when we were actually still planning for spring learning. So it was a very hectic time, and very thankful we had the support of our director and our higher leadership to carry this project out. It was a great thing that we checked in with our student center, because out of all the dates that we had sent to them, we sent to them like 7 or 8 dates. They are only able to do one weekend, which was wild. So we submitted for that weekend. We continued push for that weekend because that was the only weekend that the all of the spaces were fully available for us to be able to utilize. So yeah, I think that was a little bit of what it went into the process. It was a lot of talking to our campus partners, our own leadership team, but also inquiring if of course, if your spaces have the capacity to host something, which since spring learning for some regional areas, it might be a little bit smaller. I know for California, we only had like roughly 130 something individuals. So it's definitely able to accommodate, but maybe for other geographic locations that may be seeing up to 500 people, it's definitely a good question to be asking and considering. So that was our part. We went through, of course, like a interview process. We had a chance to talk to Joyce to inquire a little bit more about the process, ask our questions. She asked us questions. And then, yeah, it was quite a back and forth for a while, but I also know they were in the process of hiring Melissa. And so I'm sure that this process for this upcoming year is going to be incredibly streamlined because you have your person from the get-go. And so that was a little bit of my experience and the experience at Irvine.
Yeah, not much to add for Towson, but I will note that it is very important to talk to your higher leadership and your directors and even the staff that work at the host institution because it just so happened that our spring learning conference fell on spring break for Towson. So just being aware of like what spaces were available, like there were certain spaces that we wanted to use that wouldn't be available due to it being spring break and not enough staffing. So just keeping that in mind when you are considering dates as well.
That's an excellent point, Chandler, because I think that there were some challenges with some of the institutions when it was over spring break and there was maybe a food hall wasn't opened for lunch, so that made for some challenges. So it doesn't necessarily need to be over spring break unless that's what works best for the institution that's interested in hosting. And so we would always work with the institutions. I think the one thing that I will say is that we do strive to have the locations spread out so they're not all in one weekend or they're not back to back. That just saves a little bit for Melissa. We didn't quite get there, but as I think she's not going to say that, but I will. I think internally, if we can work that out, that would be something that we would want to try to do. But of course, if that's not what we can do, then of course we will make it work. Um, but I guess the biggest thing is for me that I wanted everyone to know is that it doesn't have to be over spring break, but we would work um, with the host institutions if that's the case. But we would want meals to be a consideration. I think that's probably one of the sticking points that was a little bit of more of an issue for us this year as we again tested the model. Are there other questions that any of our participants that are here have or attendees? Had some really excellent questions.
I can go ahead and talk about dates and timeline a little bit more, and we can continue to answer questions as they come in. So, what spring learning wrap up for 26 looks like, as Stephen has already shared, the deadline to register for the virtual conference is next Tuesday, the 21st. The virtual spring learning conference for 26 will take place on the 24th and 25th. And then the application to apply for the 2027 Spring Learning Chair and to be a host or a co-host will close that following week on April 29th. Our goal is to move pretty quickly on selecting a chair and then having that person be a part of those interviews and conversations with potential hosts and co-hosts. Mid-May, we hope to officially announce all of our locations and dates for 2027. And then after that has been announced, we will very quickly open up planning applications for the committee. So attendee experience, ed programming, communication and technology, and speakers and special initiatives, with the hopes that those hosts who are selected And they will go through and interview their committee, make those selections in June and July, which we know is a very busy time for our majority of us. But really hoping to have all planning committees and all, volunteers put in place by August. So the initial trainings and planning can start in August and September, with the goal to open ed programming in October. So trying to push that planning timeline up, and giving us really more time to create an even better spring learning experience for 2027. So those are all of our planned slides. Really appreciate you all coming. You asked some amazing questions. As Joyce said, this is being recorded and we'll put it on the website. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you again for our amazing chairs, and for Joyce, for all of you to be a part of this process, for our inaugural year for Spring Learning 26. And we can't wait to see you all in 27.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. Take care.